Hi painters, it is a great day to paint, so let's get started. We're working on this beautiful bowl of fruit, and last time we did get the hidden fruit finished and the plums. So today I want to work on some of the leaves, and we want to get started on these green grapes. I think it'll be a lot of fun today, so get your paintbrushes ready and we'll get started. I've done just a little section of the pattern so that I can give you just a quick overview of how to get started on the leaves and on the green grapes. You want to make sure you have your 4 values of green mixed up, and it's not terribly important what the colors are. You need 4 values. If they're not exactly the same as the values that I mixed up, it's not really critical because you're going to be changing the greens as you go along anyway. So we're going to start with one of the greens. Usually I start with kind of a medium value and I add on my palette some light to it. We're going to be smushing. So you can remember what that smushing technique is by going back on some of the older videos. I'm going to push my color out to the edge of the leaf and make sure that I get my pattern lines covered, and I'm going to very quickly just move this color around and add to it as I go along, and whatever color I feel like adding. That I added a nice little red color in there. I'll kind of calm that down with a little bit of green, but I like having some red and some oranges in my leaves. You want to make sure that your brush doesn't have too much water, too much paint on it. If it does, you're going to be just kind of moving lots of wet paint around. So make sure you dry your brush off if it's too wet. I had mine just a tad bit too wet there. Now I'm into some dark. I've got a little flipped leaf right here, so I'm going to make it dark underneath so that I can make the next edge a little bit lighter. So this is just the basic smushing, and we're going to let this dry. Here's the flipped over edge, and for now I'm just going to put some simple color in there. If I didn't get enough color in my leaf or feel like I want to change it out a little bit, all I have to do is just add some to it. But you're better off not to paint your leaves with a definite idea of what color you want them to be. They end up a little bit stiff that way. So put the colors on your brush and move them around, let them dry, and then you can add more color later if you need to. Okay? Now, once that's dry, all you have to do is the finishing up stuff. So we're going to make the veins. I'm going to turn mine a little bit so that I can pull those veins towards me. I want to mix up some blackish green, so I'm going to use my green number 4 and put some black in with it so that it's kind of a dark. It's more green than it is black, but it's very dark. And I want to do a very loose, I don't like to call it an outline, just kind of an accent line. You're not going to go along and just outline every part of the leaf. You want to just give some little hints of dark and a little bit of definition, but nothing that's real defined. Okay, use that same blackish green color to paint the veins. In the grape leaves you have 3 main veins. Now these 3 main veins are going to be a little thicker, a little heavier than what you would normally paint a vein. The 2 side veins come off of the center vein. Then you're going to use the same color to paint all of your secondary veins. And these are going to be thin with the tip of your brush and with a little more water in the brush so that they're nice and thin. Okay, now you want to mix a little bit of warm white with your dark green, your blackish green. It's still going to be pretty dark. You don't want it to be real super light, but it's going to be lighter than this very, very dark color. And right down the center of your more thick vein, you're going to paint a lighter vein. So now you've got a light vein that has dark edges on it. Now if you wanted to pull a little bit of light up onto some of the other veins just for a little variety, you could. Not all of them, but on maybe just a few. Okay, I'll turn this back around now. And then I'm going to take my small, maybe a 2 or a 4 round blender, and now I'm going to add some lights and some tints to this leaf. So if I wanted to lighten up this area in here, I could go into some of my lighter colors, my number 1 green or my yellow colors. I'm going to load for a dry brush, and I'm just going to come right in here in between the veins and dry brush a little bit of highlight or accent. And what this does, it causes the veins to actually sink down a little bit, and it puffs up the leaf texture in between. You can do as much or as little of this as you want. On this particular piece, I did spend a little bit more time on the leaves, especially some of those bigger grape leaves. I wanted them to have a lot of character, so I did spend a little extra time dry brushing some tints and some lights on. If you smush the colors on just exactly right, then you don't have to do too much of this, but you can add as much as you like. So I'll get the lights on, and we can also do the same thing with the darks. So if I want to place some dark areas beneath the grapes or the peach that's in there, then I would pick up my number 4 dark green. I could add some burnt umber to it. I could add Payne's Gray, any of the dark values. And all I'm going to do is do a little dry rub to add dark wherever I need it. And in doing this, some of those veins will become more obscure, and it will begin to look a little more natural. So you can do some light, and you can go in and do some dark if you like, and then go back to light. There's no set way that you have to do it, no specific order. Just do whatever you think it needs at the time. If you get too much dark, you can always go back and add light, or if it's too light, you can go back and add dark. And that's about all there is to the leaves. You can play with those. The other thing is you want to maybe wait and get a little more of the fruit done, and you can always go back and dry brush more highlights and more shading onto your leaves after you get more of the fruit done. Let's go back to my sketch here, and I'll show you what I did on these grapes. I used a number 4 oval blender, and I used my yellow oxide and my number 1 green mix. If your number 1 green mix isn't quite dark enough, you might have to darken it up just a tad bit. The light source is coming from the right hand side, upper right hand, so for the most part we're going to keep the light area of the grapes to the upper right hand quadrant. So I'm going to put my yellow oxide on, and then pick up my green number 1. I'm going to place that on the other part of the grape, and then I'm just going to tickle the two together. I'm not going to spend a lot of time doing that because there are so many more steps to do on these grapes, so you don't want to spend all of your time on this first layer of color. My number 1 or number 2, or maybe mix the 2 of them together, green, one of your lighter greens, then blot your brush, yellow oxide, place that right where you want it, maybe blot your brush, and then just tickle those 2 together. Doesn't matter which color you start with. You can start with the yellow, you can start with the green. Over here, we want to catch the light on this part of the grape. So I'm going to put my yellow up in there, go blot my brush and pick up my green, and just place that where I want it, and blend the two together. When I've got this done one time, then I'm going to do it one more time. And the second time I do it, I don't have to use quite as much paint. I can use less paint and I can get it just a little more blended. Once I've got that in place, I'll put this back on here and see if I can get this to dry so I can do the next step here. When that is finished with 2 layers and it's dry, then you're going to use the same brush and your number 4 green mix. We want to think about the back curve, or the curve of the grape that's facing away from the light. So all you're going to do is place this dark green in kind of a curve along the back of the grape, but not necessarily all the way to the edge. Okay, so that's your dark green, and that's what I've got here. You can see that all here and here. Okay, then once you've got that green in place, then go back to your yellow oxide and we'll blend that just a little bit better. So back and forth between that very dark green and the yellow oxide. Get that. Get those very well blended, and so that you have maybe a little bit of light showing around that back side for reflected light, but your dark green and your yellow wants to be pretty well blended. Yellow oxide and green mix number 4. And you'll just play with these until you get them just the way you want them. This is only one step there. Alright, once that's nice and dry, now I'm going to use some magic mix because I have more control with the magic mix. So I just keep it in a little lid here, and I'm going to put some tints on these grapes with some red. So again, my oval brush, my Naphthol red light, and a little bit of magic mix in the brush. A little bit of magic mix and a little bit of Naphthol red light. And I just want to give, it's going to look kind of funny at first, but as you work these grapes, it's going to be just fine. The grapes are one of the things I wanted to make sure to show you because there are so many steps, and it's always a challenge to get grapes and small little shiny things to look right. So it may take more than one demonstration. I'm not sure I have enough time to do all of the grape steps for you in this demonstration, so we may have to continue it in the next one. But I want to get lots of red tints on here. Now, along with the red tints, I can also put in some brown earth tints. So magic mix again, and the magic mix will just help you to maintain control. It kind of makes the paint thinner. It helps it to be more transparent, and it helps you to maintain that control that you need. So you can see that I'm just going along and I'm dabbing and brushing to create a lot of brownish redness in these grapes. Okay, once I have that in place, I'm going to switch brushes now and go to my small round blender. A 4, maybe a 2, but 4 seems to be about the best. I'm going to take yellow oxide again. We're going to keep on using yellow oxide for several steps, and I want to come into the fat brown part of each grape and stipple and then dry rub. Now you can tell that in order to do that dry rub, you have to have your brush very, very dry. So you're going to stipple and dry rub, stipple, dry rub. Now make sure you're not dry rubbing over where you stippled so that you're making a hole. Stipple with your yellow oxide and dry rub. Now I think that's all we're going to have time for today. So you get these grapes up to, get all of this bunch of green grapes with your yellow oxide and your green number 1, then shade with your green number 3 or 4, tint with naphtha red light and with brown earth, then switch brushes to the round blender and stipple and dry rub again with your yellow oxide. And next time we'll do the finishing touches on the grapes. I hope you have fun painting those and have a great painting day. See you next time.